Hello and welcome to Episode 2 of the Bunker to Bunker podcast. I am Ethan and this is Josh. And I would like to firstly start off by saying thank you, Josh, for taking time out of your day to be here today. Josh has a full-time job and said, you know what, let's record an episode during my job today. So big props to that. Um, but yeah, how are you? I mean, it's been a couple days since the golf world, flipped upside down, did a 360 and did everything on Tuesday. So it's been about 3 days now since we're recording this Friday morning. So what's new? Let's hear about it.
Well, of note, doing this before I start working, so that's just a dedication that we both have,
Fair.
to put, the great content out.
Absolutely.
Because we have a big
Yep.
week next week, along with, revolving news around this uh, merger. But yeah, I went to like a happy hour for the Bob's of Sports like
Mm,
Breezy Invitational. It was like a pre-party happy hour type thing
absolutely.
in
Yeah.
New York. It was at Five Iron Golf, which is just like a bunch of different
Mm,
simulators and bars there. So I
hmm
obviously met Joey, Bob, the famous Fat Perez, Frankie Borelli from
The
Foreplay was
famous.
also there too. So it
Yep.
was
Uh-huh.
a lot of fun. I think like High Noon was their drink of like a night. I don't know if they're sponsored by them, but they were just kind of passing them around, which definitely gave like a summer golf vibe. That
Yeah, of
I haven't been
course.
able to play much, but that kind of gave me the juices flowing to play and get out
Uh-huh.
there. So yeah, I met all those guys. Food, beer, high noons on them. They did like a long drive contest on like a simulator, which I couldn't partake in. I showed up
hmm
fashionably late. Um, but yeah, no.
Per
But
usual. Per
but
usual.
but I think really kind of the takeaway is that I'm sure a lot of people are Bob the sports fans, and talking with those three, and Jet too. I'll give him a shout out too because I think he deserves a lot of love too. But
Yeah.
they're all just
Uh-huh.
the like what you see on camera is what you get. They're pretty down to earth people,
hmm
ask questions about their game, off the course, passions and stuff, and just kind of had a normal conversation. And like, I thought it'd be like a little fanboyish. I think a lot of people there were kind of fanboyish, but like once you talk with them, they're just like a normal
Fanboyish.
person that like
Yeah.
when I
Uh-huh.
walked around like the area, they like I wasn't, oh my God, that's him. That's just like a regular guy now. So shout out to
hmm
them. I hope their invitational goes well today. I hope that we get to play in it soon. I made sure to tell Frankie that we'll be there in Boston, at TBC
hmm
Boston for their Barstool Classic event. So, yeah, I mean, hopefully we can play in the Breezy at some point and kind of, compare both. Definitely both are both great times, but that was my night last night, which very fortunate enough for to get a ticket last minute and go to that event. So
hmm
I'm sure you're jealous as I was, sending pictures and telling you about it. So
Yeah.
we'll have to get you out here at some
Yeah,
point.
that please. I mean, that was rather deflating to not be there, but yeah, as you said, middle of August, TPC Boston, Barstool Classic. That's gonna be a lot of fun. Hope we play well. Hope we can move on. That would be absolutely awesome. But I did see a bunch of videos online of Joey Cold cuts in the long drive, and I just felt like that would have been hilarious to watch in person because that swing is just so powerful, but it feels so bad at the same time.
Guess how
But
guess how far he drives it from like the simulator. I don't know how accurate it
two,
is, but
285 yards.
from what I saw, it was like 230, 240 with that powerful swinging.
That's it?
Yeah, which I was like
You're
surprised at.
kidding me.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe that was Carey. I don't want to like shame him, but no, but like yeah, he was striking pretty well. Bob went up there too, and took some hacks. He said like a little speech
Yeah.
during it that they're doing some partnership with Five Iron. I think like they're making their own like
Uh,
breezy Five
yeah.
Iron, probably in LA out or maybe Florida. He didn't really say, but he said a little speech, and the
hmm
fans were heckling him at that point because it was getting later in the night. Started at like 6, and he probably said a speech at 8:30. So, um,
Yeah.
but yeah, it was a great time, and hopefully down the road we can do something with them, but we have more
Yeah,
important things to tackle with
we do.
LACC. So,
Yeah, so yeah, big week next week. U.S. Open, the 123rd playing of the U.S. Open. Probably, I'd say. I mean, obviously, I think the Masters is the number one term of the year, but I always get very excited for U.S. Open. I'm very excited for the absolute insanity of a golf course that they play at every year, and it feels like they just pull these courses out of nowhere. I mean, the fact that this course, in the middle of rich LA, I mean, just that real estate is nuts, and the houses surrounding it are absolutely insane. But the course itself is actually like really nice. I mean, it just looks overall just really difficult. I mean, it with the fairways, with it's very narrow in a sense. I mean, you can't really miss it anywhere. There's trees everywhere. There's barrancas, which I didn't know what they were until about 30 minutes ago. But that's an awesome name for like a dried up river pit.
hmm
I will absolutely abuse that name next week. Um, but yeah, I mean, I'd love to just go hole by hole a little bit. I mean, I think we can start with the first hole where it's actually I think it's a really cool opening hole because usually, it's a very daunting tee shot. You think of, geez, I don't know. I mean, there's so many that could come to mind when you talk about like scary first tee shots, but it's really cool to see kind of something wide open that you kind of expect, all right, if I don't go out one under after the first hole, well, you're already behind the field. It kind of seems like that. Like that's the layup, and then you run right into the second hole, and you're like, all right, welcome to a U.S. Open. Um, so yeah, I mean, I as I said, the first hole and the second hole combined, they're kind of like par four and a half. They're kind of you have your par five, you have your par four, and I guess you're expected to bogey the second and birdie the first, so you're even par going into three. Um, but yeah, I'll let you kind of take it from there. Kind of give me some input on the first couple of holes.
well, the architect,
What you like, what you
well,
don't
the
like.
architect George Thomas, LA guy, designed LACC, Riviera, and Bel Air, and
Mm,
I know I can speak on Riv because they play it the Genesis every year. That like Thomas likes to have an easy first hole and then comes at you on hole two. So like Riv, you
mm,
have like that downhill par five, which is basically like a um,
yeah.
4.5. So I think I think overall with the course, as you said, that the kind of hole one, two, or 4.5. It's like almost every hole is at like
Hmm.
is like a half. As kind of what I
Yeah.
was kind of like listening and watching from all different platforms. They did like their course preview. Um,
Mm,
so that was definitely something that for me mentally, like as you said, like get off to a good start. Birdie par is kind of what everyone has in like their head. Just kind of looking from like a kind of aerial bird's eye view. Like there's a lot of uh, uh, topography, as you said, like the
mm,
Brancas, which is more prevalent on like the first nine. You
yeah.
have a lot of slopes on the fairway, so if it gets firm, something that I kind of read was that you need to make sure that you can like hit it in the right spot on every fairway. So you could be
Yeah.
in the
It's
fairway.
just gonna shoot to the left or to
Yeah.
the right.
So that was
Yeah. Yeah.
something, and I felt like the bunkers are very unique around the greens.
Mm,
That they kind of like if I guess like you don't ever want to be on like a lip in a bunker anyway, but kind of like the way that they're
mm,
kind of contoured, kind of like designed is really unique that I think like if you get in like a bad spot,
yeah.
you're in trouble. I didn't really see like a lot of thick rough like in like the fairway. I don't think there's really much of that, which is like when you
Mm,
think of like a wing foot, um, that was like high rough. Brookline had high rough. So it's definitely
yeah.
unique. I got to ask like one of the foreplay producers last night because like he played it for their like media day and he said it's something it's like
Uh-huh.
so unique from like other courses that they have chosen that he thinks it's like it's definitely gonna be a good test and it was just like sweet. He went there and I remember like he kind of quoted being like you would think that like no one plays this course because it's just like that nice. So I'm not sure if they like shut it down to members. I
Uh-huh.
I know that no I think I media day like they like roped off certain areas of like a fairway and tee boxes where like the players are going to be. But overall, I've only heard good things, and I think it's going to be definitely a mental test for the players with all like the slope and how firm it could get will be a factor.
I think it's really the most California looking golf course I think I've ever seen. I mean, California is, I don't want to say the best golfing state, but you have Pebble Beach, you have Torrey Pines, and you have Harding Park. The list goes on and on, but it just feels like the most California golf course there is. I can't really figure out why, but with the undulations, with the trees, and it's obviously the background when you have the giant buildings and in the back and the $500 million mansions or whoever knows how much they cost, kind of surrounding the course. But I think it's really interesting because this might be the first U.S. Open that we're not going to talk about this like insanely difficult rough. It's more so if this course is running firm, which it will be, you're just kind of got to expect that you're going to be in the rough no matter where you hit it. And that's a really interesting concept that we haven't seen. But I think that we're kind of missing like the biggest point here is these greens look like ridiculous to an extent. I mean, they look not like, oh, there's a giant false front that's going to, send the ball back 50 yards like Earn Hills or wherever. But they just look like it's going to be really tough to make birdies here. I mean, I really do. And I mean, I also, we'll get to it a little bit, but the USGA kind of has the players at their mercy here. I mean, with two par threes that are 280, 290 yards, that can span all the way back to 150, 160, like you could basically have to hit driver on a par three, or you could hit a 7 iron. So it's going to be so interesting how they set up this course because it can play to 7,500 yards, but they could lengthen it, they could shorten it. I'm really interested to see kind of how they adapt. I mean, if players go out on Thursday and just light it up, well, guess we have two par threes that are 300 yards coming into play. Um,
Well,
but the really interesting
there's
thing,
also a par three that could be like 75 yards.
75,
So
yeah. The really interesting thing to me is hole six. I think that right when I looked into a little bit, it immediately stuck out like would that be hole 12 at Chambers Bay? That kind of you have no idea where you're hitting it, and you just kind of get lucky, drive it up there. Was it either Ricky Fowler or Jordan Spieth when they drove it to like 2 inches or something and putted in for eagle? Because I know when the Walker Cup played here in 2017, the Walker Cup coach said like absolutely not, don't you dare go for it. But at being 330 yards, there's a nice little area to the right of the green that you could miss on or you could come in and attack. How many people do you think will actually take this on? And how many people will say, you know what, let me hit it to 100 yards and just have a nice wedge in? What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think it probably depends on what kind of driver of the ball you are and where like probably where like that
Yeah.
pin is because like we saw at what 14 at Oak Hill that everyone just kind of sent their driver and they hoped that if it didn't go
Uh-huh.
on the green it went into a bunker so they could like spin it. Um, there's
Hmm.
bunker. I think there might be one of a bunker in front on the right hand side, but then there's kind of like
Hmm.
bushes and rough and I don't know what they really call it with all these different names that they have for the topography, but um,
Yeah.
so I mean, there's like that hill on the right and like that big tree. So I think it'll be interesting. I mean, definitely something that I'll be, hopefully when you're there on site, if you have like a time to kind of watch what players do on that hole, something that I think will be good insight later for next week. But yeah, it'll definitely be interesting about it. I haven't really watched like the Walker Cup. I didn't really see, but I think you just said that they didn't really go for it. But yeah, I think it really depends on like the pin positions for all these different holes because what I like about the course is that there's short par threes, long par fours, short par fours, long par fives, short par fives. So like you kind of like feel like you gotta use every club in your bag essentially. You have to have
Hmm.
all like these different
Yeah.
shots and stuff. So it's definitely got me thinking about like kind of maybe like what players could suit well here. There's a lot of different storylines and stuff that we'll go into later and also next week. So I think hole six, I think I put on our document is like my like favorite hole. At least on like
Hmm.
the front nine. Um, I know like once we get to like the the last couple holes, I think from 13 to 18 is really like the like hard stretch of like the whole course.
Yeah.
I know when just
Uh-huh.
reading, like everyone kind of said like, okay, like hole 13 is where like it like not it doesn't start, but it's like a unique stretch with, 13's a par four, it's 500 yards. Then the par five,
Hmm.
600 yards. Then hole 15's are par three, that's short. 16 long par four. 17 long par four. 18 par four, it's like 490-ish. So
Hmm.
it kind of gets that stretch of like hard holes, easy holes, like kind of back to back, which is like, I guess we'll kind of really see. I mean, we all know that golf's like a mental game, so it'll be interesting to see kind of the frustration that players have about the whole strategy. So, I feel like when I watch it, it's definitely a week to get there pretty early to play the course because no one really, I don't think we've seen this course since 2017 World Cup. So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. It's interesting because if you move right along from six, so you go to hole seven, which on the card is a 284-yard par three, and you're like, all right, this is insane. Then you watch a flyover of it and you go, how in the heck is this a par three? I mean, you're talking about most players, well, I wouldn't say most players, but a majority of players will probably be hitting some version of like a 75% driver if they play it to this length, which, as I said, this is unique because the USGA, I don't think, has had this much control over like the distance of the course in recent memory. I mean, if they play the seventh hole as a 285-yard par three, I feel like that hole is going to average like 4.2 or something in the
hmm
scoring. I mean, it looks ridiculous. And then you run right to the eighth hole, which is the par five that it kind of slopes very right. I mean, you hit your tee shot to the left and just kind of hope you get lucky and it doesn't swing all the way down. But I think a common theme of the week is how forgiving could these Broncos be? I mean, are we talking about like you get in them and it's just an immediate one shot penalty? Or are we going to see some players in there hitting punch shots or cuts or whatever? And it's just going to be really interesting because out like with these these riverbeds and all that, it kind of has the feeling of like a Pinehurst in a sense. I know
yeah,
obviously those are two drastically different courses, but you think about Pinehurst is littered by sand as their rough. LA Country Club doesn't really have much rough. That I mean, obviously they do, but nothing that is like insanely penile. But then you look at these, this overgrown vegetation and sand and all that, and it begs the question, like, what is going to happen? How are players going to navigate that? Because with seemingly um, all of the fairways sloping towards them, I mean, I feel like you're just going to have balls and balls and balls just roll into these, and we'll just find out. I mean, I don't know if you have anything to throw in on that.
yeah. I mean, like definitely for the players have to judge like how firm the greens are and the fairways are. Um,
Yeah.
I think there's certain holes that they're gonna all be in like the same area. There's really not
Hmm.
many fairway bunkers. I don't believe so. Like,
No.
but there's also some that, if you go in, that's probably like a shot, to get out of. Because, as we've seen in kind of recent tournaments and majors, that, a fairway bunker, if you don't judge it right, or really any bunker, you don't judge it right. Hovland did that on set or 16 or 17 at, Oak Hill. I know that
Mm.
Memorial, Rory and Spieth went in bunkers either round. I know Rory was round one and took a triple in 18, and Spieth I think did it maybe round two, or maybe even one. So you definitely have seen in like not just majors but tournaments on tour that they play that fairway bunkers. You have to judge it correctly with a lip and the grass, the fescue ahead. So I'm sure Hovland
Mm.
doesn't want to make that mistake, but he bounced back pretty well. I'm sure we'll talk about him because he'll probably be a popular choice in pools
Yeah.
and betting. But yeah, it'll be really fascinating. I think there's a lot of creativity that these players can have. So
Hmm.
I think we can get some like funky shots out there, which is always good because that's kind of like a
Yeah.
major feel. You want to bring
Mhm.
the best players to play like their best, and I think a lot of fans I was talking to last night that they're really excited for it. I actually asked like Bob and all of them if they have played um, LACC, and they haven't. Um, they
Yeah.
played like Bel Air and Riv, which are like the same architect. Um, so,
Mhm.
and those guys, Bob is out there and Joey, so they're gonna be there too. So, and Fort Play, so you should
Mhm.
definitely try to say hi to them.
I'll find them.
Yeah. So,
I'll find them eventually.
it's definitely interesting. I think more next week, and especially you on the grounds, will have to give a little insight on how players are playing certain holes. Um, so definitely hype, but we have
Yeah.
a lot of storylines. I don't know if you wanna. Do you have any other notes on the course specifically?
Yeah, I was just gonna run through the back nine really
Yeah.
quick because I think, we should
Yeah.
touch on everything there. I think it's really interesting because the ninth hole is probably their like worst par three, but it'd probably be one of the best par threes at any other course. I feel like it's a beautiful, beautiful hole, like 170 yards. You got this gigantic walkway that goes over this ravine, just picturesque. Um, I think the 10th hole is really cool because it's kind of a wide open fairway, but you have these bunkers stuck in the middle, which are definitely gonna, screw with players. But my favorite hole would be the 11th hole, which is the 290-yard par three. I think that is an awesome design. I mean, that is one of the holes that they can take it from, 150, 160, all the way up to 290 and just have tee boxes anywhere. I think from a fan's perspective, that's an awesome hole just to sit at because there's, bunkers about 20 yards short of the green. There's bunkers on the green. I think it's going to be an absolute horribly difficult hole for the players, but I'm all for carnage. I think it's fun to watch. It makes them look more human, watch them struggle. So I'm excited for that. Um, and then we kind of move to hole 13, which kind of starts this unique stretch of like I think two very hard holes. I mean, a 507, 500-ish yard par three or par four, excuse me. It's very difficult. I mean, it's all about angles on that hole. You need the right angle into the green. Um, I think that again, that's going to be another different difficult one. Then you go right to a 600-yard par five, which is the most like U.S. Open thing I've ever heard. The U.S. Open one day needs to be in Colorado because then we'll see 800-yard par fives, and I would absolutely love that. But then after these two hard holes, it kind of feels like the 17th at TPC Sawgrass in a sense, where you go right into this par three that is honestly pretty gettable. I
Hmm.
mean, when it can shift from 130 yards, it played in the Walker Cup to 78 yards, but this is a very gettable. But also, if you miss this ball and put in the bunker or something like that, and the green is kind of shaped like the bean in Chicago. I don't know how else to describe it. Like this like elongated shape. And it hops on the hops in the bunker or anything like that. Like you're gonna be struggling there. So it's a really really cool like risk reward hole, which I'm looking forward to. But then you just kind of move into again two more 500-yard par fours, with 16 and 17, and then despite what a bunch of people say, I think the 18th hole is a really cool finishing hole. I mean, it's nothing like insanely nice. It's nothing like over the top. I think it's a really nice nondescript finishing hole that is probably going to lend itself to a bogey, could definitely win. I mean, it's one of those where like you look at it, you're like, okay, this is a birdie hole, but then you realize, no, this is probably it's probably going to average close to a five. So I think that's an awesome hole to finish on. I mean, I personally would rather have a hole where a par would win versus a birdie. I think that's a lot more fun, a lot more challenging. But overall, the course looks awesome. I mean, it's something unique. The U.S. Open doesn't really do these courses where I have this much control, as I said. Um, and really interesting going back to California 2 years after Torrey Pines and John Rahm. So that's definitely a name to watch out for. That guy knows how to play Riviera, knows how to play all the California courses. But yeah, let's dive into storylines for a couple of minutes. I know that, with the Walker Cup in 2017, there's a lot of history you can go off of in a sense. I mean, obviously, everyone's going to try and find that little thing that they can say, oh, this is why I picked that player. But that's the most recent competition round. Um, so I'll kind of let you dive into that and give us some stuff about
Yeah.
that.
So 2017, the Walker Cup came there, which was Team USA versus Great Britain and Ireland. It
Hmm.
was the largest margin of victory that in World Cup history, Team USA won 19-7. A lot of names, PJ names, Colin Morikawa, Scheffler, Zalatoris, Doug Gim, Redmond, McNeely, Cam Champ, I believe, too. So
Mm-hmm.
Morikawa went 4-0. He played all four matches. Scheffler was 1-0 and 1. Just giving out those two names because they're actually playing. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, it was a pretty dominant win, and I feel like a lot of storylines are going to be around them, specifically those two, and how it played. So I'm sure you'll see like the highlights of that Walker Cup throughout the
Yeah.
coverage. So
Mm-hmm.
those are kind of the two names from that. I also like kind of made a note is that you'll probably hear like the California storylines. You know,
Mm-hmm.
we all know Homa is from LA, has won at Riv, who
Yep.
same architect. I guess he's like the king of Cali, being there. I actually like have a ticket on
Mm-hmm.
him 35-1 that I placed in like January after
Nice.
he won at Farmers at Torrey. So we'll see how that plays
Yeah.
out. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Morikawa, I think, is probably the most interesting guy because he withdrew he was playing well at
Mm-hmm.
Memorial, withdrew in round with back spasms in round 4, and he was like kind of in it. Like I think he was within a couple shots of the leader. So um, kind of hear what kind of the state of like of his back. I think he's going to be like a very popular pick. He's also played really well at Riv too. And then you have Cantlay and Schauffele, who Cantlay went to UCLA, has also played well at all these California tournaments. Schauffele is a San Diego State guy. He's had 6 top 15 finishes at
Mm-hmm.
U.S. Opens, and 5 of those have been top 10. So, and then I forgot to say that
Yeah.
Homa and Colin went to Cal. So you have all those
Yeah.
connections of like those 4 guys, probably plus Scheffler that you are going to put in that group, and then John Rahm has played well at Torrey and Riv. So you have a lot of guys that have played well in all those courses, but no, but only Colin and Scheffler I've seen, you know, LACC, but
Yeah.
that was 6 years ago, 5 years ago. So those are kind of like the
Yeah.
names that I think will be very popular, and stuff, and especially Scheffler because he's like, he's hitting it pretty well, tee to green, but can't putt. So, hope if he can make putts, if he's kind of comfortable with these, I think they're bent grass greens and Bermuda rough and
Yeah.
fairways.
Yep.
So, those are kind of like the big names. I think like 5 or 6 of those guys that are gonna be pretty popular. Um, so I think those are key storylines going into the week.
Yeah. Now something that's pretty interesting here is how do you handle the Morikawa situation? I mean, obviously he was playing really well. I think you could kind of draw some comparisons to like what happened with Jordan Spieth. Like, he's playing really well, had this, wrist injury, backed out of the Byron Nelson, that goes to Oak Hill and really doesn't do well. How much weight do you put into back spasms? I mean, that's a very severe injury, don't get me wrong, but how do you kind of judge that when, like, if he was perfectly healthy, like, he's like the definition of the person you want to play this week?
Yeah, I mean, I also love to hear like his comments on it and kind of see, maybe how many holes he plays, practice run wise, how he's feeling. I feel like he's there like pretty early. Like, he,
Yeah.
um, I think, who knows? I mean, if I was in like the interview room to ask him a question, I'd be like, how is like your back, and did that have to do with anything that the U.S. Open is, coming up in 2 weeks? That he was just like
Yeah.
not worth, the round 4 and just call it and get right. So yeah, I think he's a fascinating name. I mean, I guess we'll see. I know like on Monday is when the odds moves like the most, I think. So we'll definitely see
Mhm.
how like the
Yeah.
books kind of judge it. But I think he's gonna be popular. Like, I think he's gonna be a popular bet. DraftKings one done pool if you still have him, which
Mhm.
I don't in my
Yeah.
pool, but could be an
Yeah.
outright. But he also might be too popular that like you can't really play. But I don't know. I feel like you gotta kind of judge that
Yeah.
number because like
That's, yeah.
in it. So yeah, I think it's kind of just like a wait and see.
Yeah. I'm really curious how that pans out because, he did withdraw. He was, I think, tied ninth after round three. Then he withdrew before round four. So it definitely was a serious injury. I think it would be less serious if, he was like 70th or something like that, and it was just like a
Yeah,
meaningless
well
18. I
he
mean, he was in
well
contention,
he
so
he was warming up, and I think he might have like worked out in the morning
hmm
and kind of felt something
yeah,
wasn't right, and I think played like the cautious card from what I read
yeah,
and stuff. So I guess we can take that for what we will,
hmm
but back injuries are pretty
yeah,
serious from prior experience
yeah,
with Tiger and
hmm
Jason
yep,
Day to like other players. So
hmm
it's this is like so yeah, I guess we'll see his comments and how much he plays, but I think he might be like the guy that people talk about if there wasn't this Live merger happening, PJ merger. I feel like that's gonna have
hmm
all the storylines
hmm
um, and stuff, and hopefully like the players get that too. During the week, I'm sure there'll be like kind of all the questions at them about this, but it's kind of the second year in a row that the U.S. Open and RBC Canadian Open have this news that isn't about them. So,
hmm
um, but LA is so unique. Especially, I'm happy because we're both PA guys. So, a
hmm
West Coast U.S. Open prime time.
Oh, it's the best thing
I mean,
ever.
I guess for you, you're actually gonna be there, but
Best
at least
thing.
for me and being on the
Yeah,
East
not
Coast,
Chris,
it's
but
like
yeah.
pretty prime time. So,
hmm
I can't wait. And also helps the people out west too that they don't have to be up early. So.
Yeah. So yeah, I think we'll wrap it up for today. I mean, touched a lot on the course. It is going to be a fun one. It's going to be challenging. I think this could definitely be a US Open where like 3 or 4 under wins it, which I think is like the best kind of golf tournament you can get. We could potentially see a cut line of like 5 or 6. Who knows? But yeah, as Josh has mentioned, I will be there on site Monday to Sunday of next week, so I will have some really creative, unique, and interesting content coming out for everyone out there to listen to, watch, and do all of that. So I thank everyone for listening to this, and get excited. Big week coming up, and stay tuned. We have some exciting stuff planned.
See ya.